Right now, as you're watching this, there's no single you experiencing it. There's no central observer sitting in your skull watching reality unfold. Neuroscience has searched for decades for the location of the self, for the place where you exist. They've found processes, patterns, neural cascades, but no you. The self you think you are, the one that feels continuous from childhood to now, the one that's about to watch a 40-minute video, doesn't exist. Not the way you think it does. And I'm going to prove it with science you can verify right now. Quick note before we dive deep. If you're the kind of person who wants to understand reality at this level, you're going to want to subscribe. This channel goes where most won't. Now, let's dismantle the illusion of self. Here's what makes this uncomfortable. You've been operating your entire life under a foundational assumption that there's a you experiencing everything, a central self that persists through time, the one who remembers yesterday, the one making decisions right now, the one who will exist tomorrow. This feels undeniable, more certain than anything else you know. Descartes built his entire philosophy on it. I think, therefore I am. The one thing that can't be doubted. Except neuroscience, philosophy, and direct observation all converge on the same disturbing conclusion. That self, that continuous you, is a construction, an incredibly convincing illusion generated by your brain to create the appearance of unity where there is only multiplicity, of continuity where there is only constant change, of a central observer where there are only distributed processes with no center at all. This isn't philosophy class wordplay. This isn't abstract metaphysics you can safely ignore. This is hard science with profound implications for how you understand your own existence, how you approach change, and what's actually possible for you. Because if the self is a construction, it can be deconstructed. And if it can be deconstructed, it can be reconstructed, differently, intentionally. That's what the next 40 minutes are about. We're going to examine 3 lines of scientific evidence that converge on this conclusion. First, neuroplasticity research that shows the brain, and therefore you, changes so radically that the person you were 5 years ago is biologically not the same person you are now. Second, the philosophical and neuroscientific case for what's called bundle theory, the idea that there is no unified self, only a collection of processes that create the illusion of unity. And third, some of the most disturbing findings from neuroscience about what happens when the brain is damaged or divided, revealing that the self isn't one thing, but a fragile coalition that can be split, altered, or erased entirely. By the end, you won't just intellectually understand that the self is an illusion. You'll see it directly in your own experience. And more importantly, you'll understand what this means practically. For change. For identity, for who you could become. Let's start with what neuroscience has discovered about the brain's capacity to fundamentally transform itself, and why that means you are not who you think you are. The brain you have right now is not the brain you had 7 years ago. This isn't metaphor. This is literal, biological fact. Neuroscientist Michael Merzenich spent decades studying what's called neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections throughout life. What he and others discovered is profoundly disturbing to our sense of continuity. Every experience, every thought, every behavior physically changes the structure of your brain. Neural pathways that are used strengthen. Those that aren't atrophy and disappear. The pattern of connections that generated who you were yesterday is already different today. Now here's where this gets uncomfortable. Your sense of self, your personality, your automatic reactions, your preferences, all of these emerge from neural patterns. When those patterns change, you change. Not superficially, fundamentally. The person who gets angry at certain triggers has specific neural pathways that activate in response to those triggers. When those pathways change, that person ceases to exist. Not just changed, ceased. A new pattern emerges. What we call you is actually a constantly shifting configuration of neural activity that your brain retroactively labels as continuous to maintain the illusion of a unified self moving through time. Studies of London taxi drivers revealed something impossible to ignore. After years of navigating the city's complex streets, their hippocampi, the brain regions responsible for spatial memory, were measurably larger than the general population. Not just more active, structurally different, physically larger. The continuous practice of navigation literally rewired their brains at a structural level. And here's what most people miss. When the hippocampus changes, spatial processing changes. When spatial processing changes, how you experience and navigate reality changes. Who you are in relation to space itself changes. The you who couldn't navigate London's streets doesn't just gain a new skill. That you is replaced by a different configuration of neural architecture that processes reality differently. This is the nature of neuroplasticity. Change isn't additive, it's transformative. Donald Hebb's famous principle captures this. Neurons that fire together, wire together. Every repeated thought, emotion, or behavior strengthens the neural coalition that produces it. Every time you react with anger, you're voting for anger to be your default. Every time you choose differently, you're constructing a different self. Not metaphorically, biologically. The self isn't a fixed entity navigating through change. The self is change itself, mistaken for continuity. But even this description assumes too much. It assumes there's still something there, something changing. Neuroscience went looking for that something. They wanted to find the self, the place in the brain where you reside, the neural correlate of consciousness, the CEO of the brain. They found nothing. Or more precisely, they found processes without a processor, activity without an actor. The search for the neural correlate of the self led to a disturbing discovery. There is no centralized location where you exist, no command center, no homunculus sitting in your skull watching the show. What we call you is a distributed process across multiple brain regions with no central coordinator. When neuroscientists scan brains during self-referential thinking, when people think about themselves, multiple regions light up. The medial prefrontal cortex, the posterior cingulate cortex, the insular. But there's no single location that could be called the self. What makes this truly disturbing is what it implies. If the self were real as we experience it, as a unified central observer, there should be a neural correlate, a place where it all comes together. Neuroscientist Thomas Metzinger spent years investigating this. His conclusion, based on decades of research, is stark. No such thing as a self exists in the world. What exists are self-models, representations the brain creates to simplify the overwhelming complexity of distributed processes into the experience of a unified I. The self is a user interface, not the operating system, not the computer, just a simplified icon that represents unimaginably complex processes your conscious awareness could never track. This brings us to the most disturbing evidence. What happens when the brain is damaged or divided? If the self were a real unified thing, damage to the brain might impair it, but shouldn't fundamentally fragment it. But that's exactly what happens. Patients with specific brain lesions don't just lose functions, they become different people. Phineas Gage is the most famous case. After a railroad spike destroyed part of his frontal lobe, the man who existed before ceased to be. His friends said he was no longer Gage, not that Gage changed, that he was gone, replaced by someone else with the same name and body. Split-brain patients reveal something even more impossible to reconcile with a unified self. When the corpus callosum, the bundle of nerves connecting the two hemispheres, is severed, something terrifying emerges. Not one self with impaired communication, two selves, two separate loci of awareness in the same skull. Experiments by Roger Sperry and Michael Gazzaniga showed this clearly. Present an image to only the right hemisphere, and the person can draw it but can't verbally describe it because language is left hemisphere dominant. The right hand, controlled by the left hemisphere, literally doesn't know what the left hand, controlled by the right hemisphere, is doing. Two streams of consciousness, two decision makers, two experiences of being I. Which one is the real self? Both claim to be, neither is wrong, because there is no unified self to be divided. There are only processes that normally communicate so seamlessly that the illusion of unity is maintained. When that communication breaks, the illusion shatters. What remains is the truth. You are not one, you are many. A coalition of processes that successfully convinced itself it's singular. And the implications of this truth are far more radical than most people are ready to accept. Quick note: if you're still here at minute 22, you're not casual about this. You actually want to understand reality at depth. Make sure you're subscribed, because we go here regularly. And if you're noticing you understand this intellectually, but want help applying it in practice, I created something specific for that gap. It's called the Manifestation Path. Link in the description. Now back to why this changes everything. Long before neuroscience had the tools to investigate the brain, philosophers arrived at the same conclusion through pure observation and reasoning. David Hume, writing in the 18th century, performed what might be the first rigorous phenomenological investigation of the self. He looked for it, directly, introspectively, and he couldn't find it. Here's what he wrote: "When I enter most intimately into what I call myself, I always stumble on some particular perception or other, of heat or cold, light or shade, love or hatred, pain or pleasure. I never can catch myself at any time without a perception, and never can observe anything but the perception." Hume concluded that the self is nothing but a bundle or collection of different perceptions, which succeed each other with an inconceivable rapidity and are in a perpetual flux and movement. This is called bundle theory. There is no unified self, only a collection of experiences mistaken for an experiencer. Buddhism arrived at the same insight 25 centuries ago with the doctrine of anatta, no self. Not that the self doesn't exist in some sense, but that it doesn't exist as a permanent, unchanging essence. What exists are the five aggregates: form, sensation, perception, mental formations, and consciousness, all constantly changing, all interdependent, no fixed you to be found anywhere in the bundle. Now here's where this gets practical. Most people live their entire lives never questioning the reality of the self. They take it as foundational, and because they take it as foundational, they take their current self as fixed. I'm the kind of person who gets anxious. I'm not good at math. I've always been this way. These statements assume a continuous, unchanging self. But if the self is a bundle, if it's a process, not an entity, then who you are right now is just the current configuration of a pattern that's already changing. The implications are staggering. You're not trying to change yourself. You're trying to notice that yourself is already changing constantly and simply direct that change consciously instead of letting it happen automatically. This isn't self-improvement. This is noticing that there's no stable self to improve, only patterns to observe, interrupt, and rebuild. Neuroscience supports bundle theory with disturbing precision. When researchers study what happens during moments of self-awareness, they find something unexpected. The sense of self emerges from the interplay of multiple neural networks. The default mode network generates self-referential thinking. The salience network detects what's relevant to you. The executive control network manages attention and decision-making. None of these networks is the self. The self is what happens when they interact. Turn off one network through meditation or brain stimulation, and the sense of self changes. Diminish the default mode network, and the boundary between self and world blurs. The unified I fragments into pure experiencing without an experiencer. Meditators report this consistently. In deep states, the sense of being a separate self dissolves, not because they've transcended the self, but because they've stopped activating the neural patterns that generate the illusion of a unified observer. Let's do something most videos won't. Let's investigate this directly right now. Don't think about this. Actually observe. I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to look for the answer in your direct experience. Not think about the answer. Look for it. Here's the question. Where is the you that's watching this video? Not conceptually, actually. Where is it located? Most people immediately say, in my head or behind my eyes. Okay, look there. Actually pay attention to that location. What's actually there? You might notice thoughts. You might notice the sensation of attention. You might notice visual experience. But can you find the actual you that's having these experiences? Look carefully. Is there a separate observer, or is there just the experience of observing? This is what philosophers call the homunculus problem. If there's a you observing experience, who's observing that you? And who's observing the observer of the observer? It regresses infinitely unless you accept what's actually happening. There is no separate observer. There is only experiencing. The sense of a you is something that arises within experiencing, not something outside of it watching it happen. Now try this. Pay attention to a sound. Any sound. Where is the experience of hearing located? Is it in your ears? In your brain? Where exactly does the sound exist as you experience it? And who is experiencing it? Can you find the boundary between the sound and the hearer? Or is there just hearing happening, and the sense of a hearer is added afterwards as interpretation? This isn't intellectual. This is direct observation. Most people have never actually looked for the self. They've assumed it, referenced it, built their entire life around it, but never investigated whether it's actually there as experienced. When you look, genuinely look, what you find is bundle theory in real time. Sensations arising, thoughts appearing, emotions flowing, but no separate, unified you to which these things are happening. Just the process of experiencing, labeling itself as I, without there being an actual I that exists independently of the process. Phenomenology, the philosophical study of conscious experience, has spent a century mapping this territory. Edmund Husserl, the founder of phenomenology, developed a method he called bracketing. You suspend all assumptions about what's real and just describe what appears in consciousness exactly as it appears. When you do this rigorously with the sense of self, what you find is what Husserl called the transcendental ego. Not a thing, a function, a pole of identity around which experiences organize themselves. But that pole itself has no content. It's empty. Maurice Merleau-Ponty took this further. The self, he argued, is not a thinking thing, but an embodied process. You don't have a body. You are a body moving through and making sense of a world. The I is not a mental homunculus, but the lived perspective from which experiencing happens. And that perspective is constantly shifting, constantly being reconstructed, moment to moment. Thomas Metzinger synthesized neuroscience and phenomenology into what he calls the phenomenal self model. The brain creates a model of itself as a unified entity to navigate reality efficiently, but that model is just a model, not the reality. The self is a transparent illusion. Transparent because we look through it, not at it. An illusion because what we're looking through doesn't exist the way it appears to. We are, in Metzinger's phrase, transparently self-modeling systems that have no selves. What makes this so hard to accept is that the illusion is perfect. The self-model is so seamlessly integrated into experience that it's invisible. You can't see it as a model because seeing itself happens through the model. It's like trying to see your own eye. You see through it but can never see it seeing. But here's what changes everything. Once you understand the self is a construction, you can deconstruct it. And once you deconstruct it, you can reconstruct it differently. This isn't self-help. This is recognizing that the self you're trying to help doesn't exist as fixed. It's a process, and processes can be redirected. The person who gets anxious is a pattern. The person who procrastinates is a pattern. These aren't fixed identities you're stuck with. They're neural configurations that were installed through repetition and can be uninstalled the same way, by conscious, deliberate counter-repetition. Most people never attempt this because they believe they have to change themselves. But there is no self to change, only patterns to observe and redirect. Let's bring this together. We started with neuroplasticity showing that the brain, and therefore you, is in constant biological flux. The person you were is gone, replaced by the current configuration of neural patterns. Then we examined the search for the neural location of the self and found nothing. No command center, no central observer, just distributed processes, creating the convincing appearance of unity. We looked at what happens when the brain is damaged or divided. Not impairment of a unified self, but fragmentation into multiple selves, or complete replacement with a different person. Philosophy and direct observation confirmed what neuroscience discovered. The self is a bundle, a collection of processes mistaken for a unified entity. What we call I is a transparent model the brain creates, not a real thing that exists independently. Now here's the revelation that recontextualizes everything. If the self is an illusion, then who you think you are right now is just one possible configuration of a pattern, not the configuration, one of infinitely many. The person who struggles with anxiety is not the real you finally revealed. It's a pattern that got reinforced until it felt like identity. The person who believes they're not creative, or bad at relationships, or always like this, is not discovering truth about a fixed self. They're describing a current pattern and mistaking it for permanent identity. And here's what's radical about this. If there's no fixed self, then change isn't about improving who you are. It's about noticing that who you are is already changing constantly and directing that change intentionally instead of letting it happen by default. Every moment, the old pattern is dying. Every moment, a new pattern is being born. The question isn't, can I change? The question is, which pattern am I reinforcing right now? Because whatever pattern you repeat becomes the next iteration of the illusion of self. This is why knowledge without practice changes nothing. You can understand intellectually that the self is an illusion and still live as if it's real. Still identify with your anxiety. Still believe you're the kind of person who can't do certain things. Still operate as if the current configuration is permanent. Understanding the illusion doesn't dissolve it. The illusion is too perfect, too seamlessly integrated into how you experience reality. What dissolves it is direct observation combined with deliberate practice, watching the processes that generate the sense of self. Noticing thoughts arising without a thinker, emotions flowing without a separate feeler, behaviors happening without a central decider. And then, in that space of recognition, choosing differently, not trying to change yourself. Recognizing there's no stable self to change, and simply installing a different pattern through repetition until that pattern becomes the new automatic, the new illusion of who I am. The neuroscience is clear. The brain changes based on what it practices. The philosophy is clear. There is no fixed self, only patterns mistaken for identity. The experiential investigation is clear. When you look for the you directly, you can't find it except as a label applied to experiencing. What this means practically is more radical than most spiritual teachings dare to say. You are not discovering who you really are. You are constructing who you're becoming. And that construction happens through what you practice daily. The self you experience tomorrow is being built by what you think, feel, and do today. Not because you're changing a fixed self, because the self is nothing but the pattern you're currently repeating. Stop repeating it, and it ceases. Start repeating something else, and that becomes the new you. Not metaphorically, literally, neurologically. This is the liberation hidden inside the disturbing truth. If there's no fixed self, then you're not trapped by who you've been. The pattern can change. The bundle can reorganize. The person you think you are can cease to exist, and someone else can emerge. Not through self-improvement, through pattern interruption and conscious repetition of something new. You are not a thing trying to become a better thing. You are a process that can be redirected. Have you noticed that you understand more about reality than you can apply? That you theoretically know how consciousness works, but practically live on autopilot? There's a reason for this that almost nobody talks about. Change doesn't happen at the level of insight. Insight gives you direction. But change happens at the level of conscious repetition. Your brain doesn't change because you understood something once. It changes because you practiced something until it became a new pattern. Neuroscience is clear. Personality is just a set of neural circuits fortified by repetition. If you want to change your reality, you don't need more insights. You need a system of conscious repetition. That's why I created the manifestation path. It's not information, it's structured transformation. You'll spend 28 days doing something most people never do. Observing, regulating, and rebuilding your identity through daily practice. It's not motivational, it's neurological. It's not conceptual, it's embodied. The process has 3 phases. Phase 1, the foundations. You identify and dismantle the automatic program keeping everything the same. Phase 2, the map. You build surgical clarity about who you're becoming and how that person lives. Phase 3, the mountain. You practice 28 consecutive days until acting as your future self stops being effort and becomes automatic. It's based on neuroscience of habit, emotional regulation, and coherent action. And it works because it doesn't try to motivate you. It tries to reprogram you. Link in the description if you want all this understanding about reality to finally become your lived reality. Before we end, 3 practices you can start immediately. First practice, the self-inquiry. Once per day, sit quietly for 5 minutes and look for the you experiencing whatever is happening. Don't think about it. Actually look. Where is it? Can you find it as a separate thing? Or do you only find experiencing happening? This isn't meditation. This is investigation. You're testing the claim empirically. Second practice, pattern observation. Choose one automatic reaction you have, anger, anxiety, whatever. The next time it arises, don't try to change it. Just watch it. Watch the thought that triggers it, the sensation in the body, the behavioral impulse. Notice that all of these are happening, but can you find the you they're happening to? Or is there just a cascade of cause and effect with the sense of I painted on afterwards? This observation alone begins to loosen the grip of identification. Third practice, conscious repetition. Pick one small behavior that represents who you want to become, not who you are, who you're building, and practice it daily. Not to improve yourself, to install a new pattern, to vote for a different configuration. Because the self isn't real, but the pattern is. And the pattern you repeat is the person you become. What we've explored over these 40 minutes isn't just intellectual curiosity. It's the foundation of conscious change. The self is an illusion, not a comforting spiritual platitude. A scientific fact with radical implications. You are not fixed. You are not trapped. The person you think you are is just the current configuration of a pattern that's already changing. And when you understand this, really understand it, not just as concept, but as lived recognition, everything opens. You stop fighting yourself and start redirecting patterns. You stop trying to be better and start practicing differently. You stop believing in the permanence of who you are and start building who you're becoming. The self you can't find is the self that can't trap you. And in that recognition, you become free. Not free to be anyone, free to build anyone, through observation, interruption, and conscious repetition. That's the science. That's the truth. And that's what's actually possible. If this changed how you see identity, leave a like and drop a comment. Have you ever directly investigated whether you can find the you experiencing your life? What did you find? Let me know below.